Hello everyone. Today I wanted to sit down and talk about mental health again, but more specifically about anxiety. Once again, I'm not an expert, but I want to share my experience with you and try to expand on how it can affect people differently. I touched on this a little bit in my first video, and I explained that I thought I simply had depression. I learned more about anxiety after a panic attack that I experienced, and I realized that I have been struggling with anxiety for a long time. I don't like to perform certain tasks with people around or watching me, especially if I know they're good at the task or hold a high opinion of how the task is performed. Cleaning and cooking are the two best examples I can think of from my experience. I'm sure everyone has experienced situations where you are doing something and another person makes a comment about how you should do it or how they do it. I'm also certain that I have even said this to people. I have improved on these two main problems now, but I still don't like to cook when my partner is in the room. Anxiety can cripple us in similar ways to how depression can, but from my experience, it's a much scarier feeling. With anxiety, it's a state of constant worrying and overthinking every situation. A good example is walking the dog. The pressure of the task comes from the obligation to walk them, then comes the fear to interact with people, and then the worry of being judged constantly. And then a problem comes when trying to relax. You cannot relax because this task needs to happen, so you just lay there, doing nothing, or doom scrolling. Right now, I would say that I suffer from anxiety a lot more than depression, and I also believe that anxiety is harder for me to prevent and overcome. One thing that I find frustrating is I know what physical symptoms I am showing when I have anxiety, and I don't know how to prevent them. Actions like biting my nails, biting my lip, and being fidgety are three really big signs that I am anxious, but I cannot stop it. Another thing that I experience is muscle spasms, which can occur from high anxiety and stress, but they can also happen from tiredness and consuming too much coffee. Sometimes these muscle spasms can be really concerning, and that in itself is likely my anxiety worrying that this is worse than it is. Socializing when experiencing anxiety can be really difficult and scary, and ultimately it is exhausting. Many people will have a fight or flight response which is attributed to anxiety in many cases, as anxiety is causing them to worry about an upcoming event or problem that they have to deal with. Therefore, they are preparing to either run from the situation or defend themselves from it. Some people feel a stronger pull to running from a situation rather than battling through it, hence why those people who struggle with anxiety may leave a social event early or find ways of never attending. When being invited to socialize, there are many stages that anxiety will strike. First, there is the invitation to hang out with friends. It can feel like there's an obligation. Questions like, will they be upset or annoyed if I reject them, come into your mind. If the location is a busy place or has a busy route, that can also have an effect. And the most crippling part, at least in my experience, is the commitment at the last moment. There have been so many times in my life where I cancel a plan or want to cancel at the last moment because I suddenly feel overwhelmed and cannot deal with the situation. If I'm not dealing with generally high anxiety at the time, and I go to a social meeting despite my anxious feelings, most of the time it works out okay and I have a good time. Whereas if I'm having high anxiety, then going to socialize can be incredibly taxing on my mental health, and it would just simply exhaust me. Identifying anxiety can be difficult, just like depression. I am less confident in my knowledge of anxiety compared to that of depression, but I will do my best to elaborate. Some people are very good at masking their mental health issues, and a lot of people will just simply smile and laugh to get through the day, and most people will have no idea that that person in front of them is suffering in their own mind. I would say the most obvious signs are the changes in a person's behavior. When having anxiety, it becomes harder to take care of yourself, so maybe it's harder to shower and clean yourself. Eating healthily becomes harder, and that doesn't just mean eating too much, that includes eating too little. I myself will overeat most of the time, but sometimes I do undereat. Others might experience undereating more than overeating. When I really think about it, I can identify that I was experiencing anxiety around the time I started working, around the age of 18. It became impossible for me to keep my room tidy, and this is a vicious cycle, because as my mom would say, a messy space is a messy mind. The room gets messy because I cannot bring myself to clean it, and then the task becomes so heavy that I cannot start it. Everyone will have different reasons why they experience anxiety. Many people have been through a traumatic event that means they cannot handle certain situations or people as well as others. I myself do not know exactly what caused my anxiety. I believe that it was an accumulation of a lot of different small things, but I cannot be certain what really stands out to me. I do not think that it came from the way my parents have raised me, but I think it is likely to have come from my school life and further affected by my work life. If you experience anxiety, try to speak with someone about it. Sometimes I find that many of the pressures are eased when I speak openly about what I am anxious about. If you made it this far, then thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have learned something or feel heard.